Welcome to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have on Jillian Als. Now, Jillian, you are going to talk about something that we don't talk about a lot. We're going to talk about the hidden challenges that every C-suite executive, whether you're a CEO, CMO, CRO, we all need to be thinking about in terms of creating long-term sustainable growth in our business. And when I say that we don't talk about them a lot, is because they're challenges that point towards us. They're really the biggest challenges are our own internal challenges inside of our own company. And we like to think about the pressures outside, right? We like to think about the things that are changing, the dynamics that are holding us back, the competitive threats, the whole SWOT analysis and everything. But we're going to talk a lot about what we can be doing right now to make major change. And you've lived through everything from bankruptcies to exits, mergers and acquisitions. You've been a B2B SaaS executive for your entire career. You are actually, on the personal side, you're now living in Denmark, an American living overseas and enjoying that. I would love to just have you, if you wouldn't mind, explain a little bit more about your background before we dive right in.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you said so many nice words. Thank you for having me, Steve, by the way. Happy to be here. So yeah, as you said it, I've been in B2B marketing my entire career, doing B2B SaaS before it was called SaaS. I like to joke that I used to stand at the fax machine waiting for the orders to come in to age myself a little bit at the end of the month. And we shipped CDs back then. So I've been through, as you said, a lot of M&A activity. I've tried everything from, startup to scale up to enterprise organizations. I really thrive in scale up and bringing kind of structure to chaos, and scaling companies is something I'm really passionate about and love doing. And I've done partner-led growth, product-led growth, sales-led growth. So different motions, you name it. So yeah, I'm just someone that's not afraid of change. I bring a lot of energy to everything I do. And really enjoying bringing sales and marketing teams closer together at kind of the heart of everything I do, the companies I join.
I'm going to jump right in and have you tackle the biggest challenge. And when I say the biggest challenge, I ask every C-suite executive that comes onto this podcast, and we're up over 250 now. What are your greatest challenges to creating long-term sustainable growth? By far, the number one challenge was the exact same thing that you said, internal alignment. Tell me about why you named that as the biggest challenge, but then what we can do about it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I mean, we're so good at getting in our own way sometimes because there's a struggle with growth. It can drive siloed approach, right? Because everyone is running 110 miles per hour towards something, and it just creates disalignment instead of alignment. And then your definitions of what good looks like varies. Your goals and strategies and comp models diverge your objectives rather than merge them. And I think it's not intentional. Obviously, everyone wants to be the best at what they do, but you kind of have to come down a level and say, okay, we need to all be operating at 80% so that we're harmonious and in agreement of what we mean, instead of us all running at 110%, because it just creates chaos.
Well, you had mentioned in our previous conversation something that nobody else had, and I thought was really insightful. You said, in order to stay aligned or be aligned, what is our definition of growth? Because that's going to be very different if we're going to try to achieve 30% year-over-year growth, right? How we do that is very, very different than if we are trying to manage to like 10% growth, right? Or we're acquiring companies this year and our biggest goal is just to assimilate, right? And not lose ground, but position ourselves for growth in the future. There's a bunch of different ways we can look at growth, but it drives what we do on a day-to-day basis. Like, how do you define growth when sometimes it can be intangible? It's just this number of like, we want to increase revenue, right? Like sometimes growth is like so generically, described. How do we get our hands around it so that it's something that actually provides alignment internally?
Yeah, I think you need to have the most honest conversation of what does growth mean to you individually. I mean, at the highest level, do we want to grow by, to your points, is it expanding our product portfolio? Is it, selling more to the existing customer base? Is it new logo acquisition? Is it market expansion? Like, what are those rocks we need to move in order to achieve the growth? And it also align on what it means for each department, because okay, we want to go up market, for example. It's a famous one, right? We want to sell more to enterprise. That has impact on the entire organization. The legal department probably needs to staff up and get a deal desk in place. Your product team needs to make sure that they're probably releasing less often sometimes because they need time to communicate, releases in advance. When you're growing really fast, you're used to just, doing releases all the time, or your ISO certification or all of these things. And your marketing strategy changes if you're going up market. So I think everyone needs to get around the table and say, if this is where we're going as an organization, when do we agree and we're all on board? And how do our strategic framework of goals for the entire company like match up to that? How do they build up to achieving those goals of growth? So you need to be specific of what you mean by growth and how to get there.
Yeah, it's really astute because it changes the dynamic so much. And there's like two or three factors that you identified that have overarching impact on everything that we do. And that was definitely a huge one. Another one was, how are we adapting to technology and changes? And obviously AI is like everybody's talking about these days, but you talked about as C-suite executives that we need to not only understand, we need to test, we need to refine, we need to keep our eye on that, but at the same time, we can't lose kind of line sight of the day to day and what we're doing. Tell me a little bit about balancing kind of the disruption of AI and technology, but keeping on track at the same time.
Yeah, I think every company is facing this right now because every owner and every board is like, why do more with less? You've got AI, right? I think it requires that you also recognize that not every AI initiative is going to be a success. I think there's different statistics out there, but some of like the most respected marketing leaders I know out there are talking about for every 10 tests they do, one has an actual impact. So I think you need to define what the metrics are you're going to look at before you even start the project to implement whatever AI process you want to do to understand pretty quickly if it's having the intended impact or not. Previous company I worked at, we had like an AI committee, right? So people that were really passionate about it that could drive it. So it wasn't a drain on every single individual, and really try to elevate how AI can help like across departments and across processes and not at the individual level. Like, sure, we all use our chosen kind of LLM to kind of proofread or whatever we're doing to make us a little bit faster in our own day to day. But where it can move the needle is really when it kind of automates processes that touch multiple hands. And that really requires like ownership, and giving that to someone who's really passionate about it, I think makes a lot of sense instead of trying to have everyone invent the book, so to speak, so that people can benefit from it and keep running.
It's interesting because, if we were having a conversation and we were talking about, hey, there's this new technology that's coming out, it's going to change the world. Hey, 85% of implementations, they fail. But let's really get excited about this, right? That's what AI is. Those are the McKinsey studies, that most often they fail. And so we really have to be discerning about it and really understand. Most people are going into AI, because I talk to a lot of people about this. They're going into AI with the expectation this is going to change everything. So let's just start doing it instead of being very critical and saying, okay, well, hang on a second. What are we trying to change? Like, what's the use case that we're trying to test here? And does AI fit, directly into that? Starting with the problem. We as marketers are trained, right? We start with understanding the problem of our customers. We don't necessarily start that way with AI. We kind of just jump in, like, okay, let's just see what the most we can do with it. So it's really interesting. So there's a whole nother kind of internal factor that I wanted to talk about as well. And that was, I would just call it the biggest missing alignment factor. And the biggest alignment factor is that there's only one voice of authority in our business, right? We all know it. It's the voice of the customer. But if we're not close to the customer, we're not understanding the voice of the customer, then all of a sudden, guess what? We're like C-suite executives. We can make decisions, right? We know how to make decisions, right? And if there's not something that's the rudder of the ship that's aligning all of us together, then we're off and we're making different decisions, right? Obviously, we have one company that we're trying to support, but that's where misalignment really happens, right? Is where there's a lot of really smart people making a lot of independent decisions, and there's not an alignment factor. You called it the missing alignment factor. And I just wanted to get your point of view on that.
Yeah, I think to your point, it's so important to understand who you're solving for, what you're solving. I mean, in my B2B SaaS world, we call about the ideal customer profile, the ICP. And sometimes you're looking at it through your own lens of your own idea of what you're solving for the world instead of actually talking to someone and understanding if your product can fix their problems. And as a C-suite executive, you should be talking to the customer. You can't get that far removed. So, in fact, I'm at a new company right now. I'm about a month in, and I've done, I think it's 8 customer calls so far. I don't know if that's impressive or not, but it's something, I did on the first day was I reached out to our CS team and said, "Who can you introduce me to? I really want to talk to our customers and hear it from them. How do they describe our products? How do they position us internally when they renew?" Right. So we also talked about talking to the right customers and making sure that you're talking to the customers that stick around and what is it that makes them stick. And even sometimes I'm trying to get in touch with churn customers and say, "Why did you leave?" Right. So that is also, and it's just so important to get that outside in perspective because to your point, yes, we're executives, we can make decisions. Sometimes you're working with founders and they're visionaries, and that's great. And there needs to be a balance because sometimes your customers will say, "I just want a faster horse," and didn't ask for the wheel. Right. So there is an element of innovation that needs to play as well. But to your point, like we still need to solve what's keeping them up at night. And we can only really figure that out by talking to them directly.
So my goodness, I have so many questions here. So what you're doing is so right. I mean, I talk to a lot of CMOs that say, in your position, first thing I do, I get on the phone with customers, right? 8, 10, 15, 20. But here's what happens. You get busy. And all of a sudden, yeah, you get really busy really quick. And it's not sustainable. Yet it was interesting. I just had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a 4-time B2B CRO. And he said, Steve, we all need to have conversations with a customer. None of us can put something else as a higher priority on top of it. And he stopped me and he said, just to make a point, these are conversations that are outside of the sales process. And this was a CRO talking about this, right? Because here's what's interesting. I just want to get your feedback on this. We tend to, in B2B, think we're always talking to customers. I mean, sales is having conversations with the prospects all the time that turn to customers. Customer success is having conversations with the customers all the time. We got our NPS scores and surveys, and we got more data than we ever have. We're talking about them all the time. We're tracking them all the time. I mean, they are right here all the time. The thing is, you didn't say, you know what? I dug into all the data. Man, when I came in, I was like, because we have more data than we've ever had. What you didn't say is the data is going to tell me what I need to know, right? And nobody's saying the data is not important. But what I'm taking away from what you're saying here is the one-on-one conversation where there's not an agenda. Nobody's being sold to. There's not a wall up. There's not a shield up in the middle because you're getting sold to. It's just an honest, deep conversation. That the power of that made it one of the top priorities when you join the business.
Yeah. I think it guides strategy, right? And it helps me as a marketer communicate better, of course, if I'm speaking their language. And you get so many anecdotes you don't see in the data. Like you get to know them in a much more kind of honest way and can ask them follow-up questions that the data will never tell you. Like, "Oh, we're selling to manufacturers in Germany, and this is like the first generation digital marketing high." Because they're just trying to like save their butt and like get sales to use a CRM if they have one. And if you're just coming from things and thinking, because I'm selling to marketers now, but like I can't look at it through the lens of how I know marketing and B2B tech, where we have the echo chamber on LinkedIn and everything else. So I think that conversation, to your point, where you're not trying to sell anything, you're just trying to understand them more, is so important in terms of continuing to drive value and speak to them and encourage them to come back for more. And yeah, I think it's also helping me, like when you're new in a position, challenge the status quo. Say, "I heard this from a customer. Like this doesn't make sense to me. So it could be I'm wrong. Fair enough, but have someone else explain it and see if they trip up or if you can get enlightened and maybe you are wrong." But I think it's just been super valuable because data only tells you what's happened. It doesn't tell you where things are going. and you can manipulate data to tell you any story you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to ask, for the benefit of everybody that's watching here, I'm going out on a limb, but I'm guessing that when you had those conversations with the customers, you didn't start it out by saying, "Hey, here's what we do for you. Can you tell me a little bit about that?" How do you start those conversations so you're getting the most value out of that learning?
I'm obviously super upfront. Like, thank you so much for taking your time. I understand your time is valuable, so the fact that you're even joining is really appreciative. I am brand new to this organization. I'm unlikely to be able to solve any problems that you surface, but I am committed to following up. But really, honestly, I just want your first take on what is it we do for you? Why are you happy with us? What would you change if you could? And I have a specific question that I also use in job interviews. But I'm just like, give me a 30-second elevator pitch of what we do. Like, just to understand how they articulate our value proposition.
So phenomenal. So about a year ago, I had a three-time B2B CMO on. She is also what do you call it? A value accelerator advisor for Goldman Sachs. It helps them direct hundreds of millions of dollars in investments. And she said the most powerful question in the environment that you're talking about, which she recommended that we need to spend 20% of our time doing it ongoing, like that we don't ever stop. That's that much of a priority. But she said the most powerful question is this. And it's exactly what you said in just a little different words. She asked them, "What do we do for you?" Because she wanted it to be that open-ended. We all know, we all think we know, we think we have a pretty darn good idea of what we do for our customers, right? But the power of that, how surprising have the answers been when you ask that kind of an open-ended question?
Hard to be surprised when you're new in an organization, I guess you could say, because everything is new. I was more surprised than sitting in a leadership team meeting and being like, that's not what I heard. How can we be this, misaligned already, so to speak, to bring it back to our original conversation? So I think I was very inspired by where they started, like where they first saw the value in our platform. Cause, a lot of B2B tech is you come in with a specific use case and you try to expand it. Right. And I think it helps define how to add value to a customer if you understand where they came in first, right? What is that biggest pain point that you solve for? And then how have you evolved to help them over time can help, again, on the marketing side, where to focus the most of your energy from a land and expand perspective. So I think, like I said, I haven't been shocked on any of these calls other than I'm learning new things about our platform for sure. So I'm asking. So it's a great learning experience regardless. And I do completely subscribe that you need to continue doing it. And of course, I'm going to get busy and it's going to be hard to operationalize over time, but there's ways to do it. And I think there's customer advocacy groups and, the product team is also asking for time with the customer. And my previous position, I just had a personal goal every quarter to be on at least, 2 or 3 customer visits or customer calls that, yes, they might have been a part of like actual business, but use the opportunity to ask dumb questions, so to speak.
You know, so this is a recommendation that Gartner has made, Forrester's made, McKinsey's made, Deloitte's made, that in a B2B company, the chief marketing officer should act as the chief customer officer. And that we don't have that role in B2B. Like B2C companies have chief customer officers, they have chief experience officers. Typically, 99.9% of the time in B2B, we don't have that. But it's not because the customer isn't important, right?
No. I mean, you see it sometimes, but then they just own customer success. I mean, the how we work with our customers is, to your point, like it's so integral. Like you've got support, you've got the people that are trying to sell them more, you've got product that wants to build better for them, you've got marketing that wants to understand them better. I think I do subscribe to that marketing should own that kind of element of it because we also own, like when you say chief marketing officer, I like to talk about as chief market officer because you need to understand the market. And that's your customer, that's where they are in the user journey. What kind of content are you supporting for where they are on that user journey? I mean, these are the things that marketing is thinking about all the time and bringing it full circle into making customers promoters because cost of acquisition is only soaring. So expanding your customer base has always been like almost a CS or an AM initiative, but I think there's a huge opportunity for marketing to have an impact there. And help them build community and bring it back, to top of the funnel, so to speak, to drive even, new logo acquisition as well. So I do subscribe to it. And I think it's not been solved at any of the companies I've been at perfectly. But I think back to the original comment around alignment, that leadership all has this focus on the customer. So for example, I'm new in this company. We're doing our strategy for 2026. And we've been talking about the product experience and how we want to improve it. And we ended up just saying, we need to talk about the customer experience, and the product is part of that experience, but we need to be maniacally focused on improving the customer experience, not the product experience in itself. It is a component of it, but we really need all touch points because, again, back to marketing, what is your brand? It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And that has everything to do with their experience, very little to do with your logo.
So many things you said in there are so important. A couple of things that I want to like really support what you said. Customer experience. We had to talk about customer experience. Big study McKinsey did in 2023, 400 highly profitable companies, B2C and B2B, and they determined the number one differentiator in the market is CX. So it's the number one. Gone are the days of product and price as our competitive advantage foundations, right? ChatGPT is writing code these days. The minute you come out with a brand new feature that you're in love with on your platform, it's going to be replicated, right? It's not a long-term sustainable growth strategy. CX is. I love that you brought that up. The other thing you brought up was that we have to really focus on customer expansion. And Forrester came out with a study that said for B2B company, 73% of new annual revenue should be sourced from existing customers. That's how important it is. But we probably flip in terms of the focus we have on new logo development versus customer expansion is the exact opposite of that, if not more.
Well, and I wonder if it's not to do a little bit with like the come up of the CRO typically, statistically, are coming from sales roles, right? And then they inherit customer success or the customer expansion part of it, and maybe even marketing to some degree with things that they've not really had a focus on before. And they have this, and to be honest, your owners do too, obsession of, top line growth and new logo acquisition. And it's addicting, especially if you feel like you can't figure out the customer part because it can be hard. But it is like, especially if you're looking at SaaS companies that are so dependent on recurring revenue, 1% on a bigger customer base, that makes all the difference. And like, again, back to the cost of acquisition and the AI disruption of the search bar, all of the things making marketers' lives pure hell at the moment. I think there's just not enough focus on what actually can move the needle.
I'm going to attempt to remember and recap because we were talking about the hidden growth factors before, right? And another way to rebrand that is the basics that just need to be done, whether it's internal alignment, defining what really growth is, staying in touch with the voice of our customer truly, right? Focusing on customer expansion and new logo development at the same time. These are all the kind of things, when I focus on AI and new technology. If you came in to your new role and the CEO sat down and said, hey, Jillian, I'd really, really like to make sure that you're helping us not become more misaligned, but you're helping us align. You'd be like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. And that we need to all agree on where our growth objectives are. Oh yeah, basic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Understand the customers who we're serving. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Make sure that we're adopting AI properly. Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Every single one of these is like a basic. We're not getting the basics right. These are hard. I think we look at them such as basics that we tend to then don't give them the time and the due that they are warranted. Because it's almost like you hear things so often, we have to create value for our customers. Oh yeah, absolutely. We got to create value for our customers. In the meeting we're saying, no, let's not talk about product experience. Let's talk about customer experience, right? Let's really focus on this. It's not just, we have to create value for the customer. So my massive takeaway from our conversation here is it's all under our control. Our biggest levers that we can pull for creating exponential growth in our business is under our control. Nobody is telling you how you have to talk to your customers. Nobody is telling you how you have to align internally. Nobody is defining from the outside how you operate as a business. This is all under our own control. So how do we fix this? If this is like a mentality, like a mind shift set.
So I think for me, it starts at the top, which is cliche to say, right? At your leadership level. But as an executive, I have chief marketing executive. I have two teams. I have the leadership team and I have the marketing team, but the leadership team is my first team. And that's because everything we do touches these strategic decisions that touch all the departments. We need to be completely aligned on, do we agree on what we mean by them and how to get there and the impact that it has across our teams. Like we need to be able to be the coaches of all the teams and understand our strengths and who we need to empower to work together to make things work faster or not get, death by silos, so to speak. And make sure that our metrics, we're sharing the same goals. Like we can't incentivize people with different metrics because it creates divergent behavior. And, the comp plans, all of these things need to align to the North Star metrics that you define together as a leadership team. So it does absolutely start at the top. And it means that, yes, the CMO knows the CRO's coffee order. And, these kind of things, like you really need to create a mentality that is your first team.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had it described to me as, because as marketers, really, really good about trying to like understand the needs of our customers, but the other departments and our C-suite executive peers, they're all our internal customers. And if there's one thing that marketing can do, marketing can't be the typical baton pass where we're the MQL creators, right? Or SQL creators at the highest level. And then we pass it off to sales and they take it. We go back to finding more leads. And then they go to customer success. If they close a deal, they're like, hey, I'm going to go back to closing some more deals. You kind of take it and run with it. I guess you could call that a team sport, but it's not like being all on the field at the same time. And to me, it's all about playing appropriately in the sandbox together. And every family that we've all, there's always all about, I got 4 teenagers. Believe me, misalignment on responsibilities and duties around the house is running rampant, right? Everybody wants the baton pass. I already did that. That was his responsibility, right? Instead of everybody coming together and just saying, okay, how do we all work together?
How do we solve for this? You need a common enemy, right?
Yes,
You need a common enemy. So I've used this analogy of like, I don't know if you've seen the Avengers, but like, if you think of sales as like Captain America on the field, like spearfishing essentially, and you've got Iron Man who's like inbound using technology to like, he kind of attracts the troubles. Like, so I've used that. And then you've got your CS team and like partner team, and you need to be working together against the common enemy, whether that's, I guess growth is not an enemy, but stagnation of growth, of course, is the enemy. And so I think, finding that North Star together is really important.
So now I'd love to have your opinion on this. This is specifically a message. There's a lot of C-suite executives and leaders that are listening. This is for the CMO in particular. I would say that if I had to define today's CMO, it would be a much different role than was prototypical, much more than just the typical marketing role. We have to be, right? We have to be very pipeline focused, right? All the way through the end. And then we have to be customer churn focused, right? We like customer marketing is a big part of what we should be thinking about and doing. But what's rampant in the CMO ranks, and if you're inside of any of the CMO groups and everything, imposter syndrome is talked a lot about. We're looked upon as the one of the largest cost centers in the business. We are thought of, or we feel like a support center, right? We don't have a seat at the table. I mean, I hear this all the time. And so here's one of the things that I do talk about with our CMOs, and I'd love to get your opinion on, is getting our rightful seat at the table. If we can be the one who truly represents the voice of the customer, that's a higher voice of authority than the board, than the CEO, the CRO, than us as the CMO, right? If we can truly do that and wield that magic power of the Avengers, right? For good across all the different departments, that gives us a strategic seat at the table like we've never had before. That's much different than providing leads for the organization, right? What's your opinion about that?
I agree. I think that it is an opportunity. I think there's multiple ways to earn your seat at the table. I think voice of the customer and owning that, especially since no one else does holistically, is an enormous opportunity to do that. But in my experience, it's also about driving impact, being impact oriented. I think I shared with you my ethos of like marketing serves at the pleasure of the growth of the company. And that can look different based on company motion, stage, size, all of those things. And as marketers, it's our responsibility to adapt and market ourselves better. We should be natural born communicators. And, it's a lot of what I focus on is making sure I show the impact that the team is driving. Because to your point, like I should be using the most money in the company. The point. I mean, maybe outside of like Amazon's bill, I think like I should be the one that, I think if everyone agrees that like the best compliment you can get is like, I found more money for you. Deploy it because you're doing it so well, right? Because you're showing the impact that it has. It's not easy to do. It only really happened to me once, I think. but I think there are a lot of ways that we can be better at getting our seat at the table and, showing impact, being the voice of the customer, internally marketing ourselves better, and really playing the team sport and orchestrating. We are natural born communicators. So help the team communicate, help the CPTO communicate if he needs it, right? I think these are the things that have been successful for me and making sure that I feel like I have a rightful voice and take it as a badge of honor to bring the CMO into every board meeting, for example. Like my career has evolved from having a 10-minute slot at the board meeting and popping back out to just being there the whole time. So I think the market is ready. We could do it. And it's not easy. And, we're still taking all of the punches.
Well, I've got one more question, and this is maybe the toughest question of all, because we've covered a ton of territory on this conversation, right? But if there was a single takeaway that you wanted the other C-suite executive peers that are going to be tuning into this podcast to take away, one thing for them to take away, what would it be?
Ooh, I feel like I'm just going to say something super cliche, but that we have a responsibility as marketers to articulate not only the customer voice, but the internal alignment. So we should be owning our strategic kind of goal setting for the year and pushing that through the, communication through the organization, making that waterfall effect, because it starts at the top, but it needs to live and breathe in the organization. And as communicators, typically, that's the marketing profile, right? That is a responsibility I think we have. And I think when we do that successfully, we get to have that voice at the table and not be the average tenure of 18 months at the CMOs and these kind of things. I think that's what I would say.
I would like to say that I would like to have another couple of hours and keep talking, but I know people are going to have questions. And would it be appropriate if I gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out?
Yeah. I'm the only Jillian Als, I think, in the world. But find me on LinkedIn for sure.
Well, the mission of this podcast in particular is to take the insights and the perspectives and the experiences of all of us as C-suite executives that have to do our functional role, but also have to be leaders of the organization overall in its strategic direction and its path. And if we can bring worldwide perspectives, C-suite leaders, on how we do that together, that's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you were an amazing part of that rising tide today. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you. That's the highest compliment to ask for. Appreciate it.